Welcome to Fear Coded, a podcast where we talk about media from the horror genre and take a queer reading of a single book, video game, film, podcast, or TV show to explore just how queer horror can be. And in this episode, trust no one but us, as we're talking about the 1996 television show by Chris Carter, The X-Files, with a focus in our conversation this time being on the second episode of the fourth season, Home. I'm David.
I'm Marilee.
And I'm Tyler.
And while we snack on some sunflower seeds, I want to check in and say hello with my co-hosts on how things are going for them in a landscape of horrors that our real world has to offer. What's making y'all scared, or what's making you feel prepared?
I'm scared of Thanksgiving.
You're scared of Thanksgiving because it's coming. It's like upon us.
Thanksgiving is upon us. The plight of this bird-focused holiday never ends. Mainly though, it's the crowds that I'm going to have to deal with at the grocery store because I know for sure we're going to run out of stuff. I don't want to deal with where I'm going. There's a lot of like cranky retirees, and I don't want to deal with them being like really conservative around me. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the food. For sure. I'm looking forward to the family time and all the traditions and blah, blah, blah. All that good stuff. But I'm just scared of the people.
Yeah. Yeah. People are the worst.
They are the worst.
Kind of a thesis of this episode. But Tyler, while we're talking about Thanksgiving, we're talking about the foods of Thanksgiving. Ignore all poultry. What are we interested in here at the Thanksgiving table?
So, don't kill me.
Okay, I can't.
That's a weird.
To do that,
listen,
yeah.
we say a lot of shit about David's food choices. I'm so sorry. You have prepared to put yourself on blast here. We're gonna have the opinion that we have, and it's only fair if we give it to you with both barrels.
Well, and also, what could be worse than canned tuna, Tyler? I think I've already lowered the bar for you.
Very true. Well, we are just not really a turkey people. We don't buy a turkey.
Yeah.
We don't prep a turkey. Okay, cool. Because I know some people are very like big sticklers for turkey being like it's the main focus of the day, but we are a ham people, so we get like a honey ham.
Ham's delicious, so jot that down first of all, foremost. Secondly, we also don't really do a turkey. I think we're doing one this year because we have some guests who. When my sister was pregnant with her oldest, she started having morning sickness, like on Thanksgiving when she was cooking the turkey. And so for years, literally years, just the smell of a turkey cooking would just make her violently ill. So turkey was a never. We did ham. We've done fish a lot of years. But yeah, I think we're doing, I do the dessert for our Thanksgiving, so that is none of my business, frankly. I will eat with the food that arrives, and I will be happy to do it, but that's not my bag, baby.
Yeah, I think side dishes are actually the star. I think that the bird is so milquetoast that like you don't need to worry. Like it's all about, for me, it's the green bean casserole. It's the best use of French fried onions. Like that's, what are we doing here?
Now, what do we all think of cranberry sauce?
Love it, but in both grandma style and a la Bart. I think both are excellent preparations of cranberry sauce.
Okay, cool.
When we had a French roommate for 3 years, he rented a room for us in the house. All bills paid, $200 a month. He was fantastic. He was French. We wanted him to have an American Thanksgiving, and I insisted that part of that was a canned shaped cranberry sauce.
Yeah, no, it is essential.
Thank you.
What about you, Marilee?
Oh, I was going to say something else, but yeah, you're reminding me that this episode is airing right around Thanksgiving. We're recording it in advance, obviously. But I have to assume that the day that the person that I'm going to be when this is released, I'm going to be so scared. Because like I said, I do the desserts. I'm going to be so stressed that like I will be vibrating. I'm 100% sure because this happens every time.
Is it because of the preparation of food, or is it all the culture and the people like Tyler, or is it everything?
No, it's I know that it's going to be great. I know everybody's going to be very complimentary. I know that I don't have to be worried because I am actually a pretty good baker and that's all fine. But in my mind, I know that every year there's always at least one thing that happens that's such a huge, that I view as a huge fuck up, that I'm like gonna be really mad about it. And I'm gonna be like, I have to, because we feed a lot of people. And so we need a lot of different desserts. And I do all of them because I'm good at baking. I like baking. I know this. I'm gonna be a different person. I'm gonna be so stressed, motherfuckers.
Wow. Well, I don't want you to be stressed, Marilee, and it does sound like these will be things that you will notice, and that is important for the way in which you navigate your world. But it also sounds like, because of the added emphasis you mentioned with that other people will probably not notice those things.
Yeah, no. People will be like, Marilee, it's fine. Nobody's going to tell that whatever you think is a huge problem is, and they'll be like, no, this is delicious. And every time I'm like, okay, but like, I clearly got something wrong. That's unacceptable behavior. I need to be shunned to an island.
A pecan is out of place, and therefore...
Oh, no. Nobody cares. Pecan pie is fine. It doesn't matter. You should chop them up. Every time you see a pecan pie with like the pecans all artfully fanned, that's somebody who values looks over flavor, because it's better if you chop them up because you have a better mouthfeel.
See, and as they say, the proof is in the pudding, and the tasting of it.
Yes, exactly,
David.
Okay, well, pudding is an English term for all desserts.
You have to remember, he's very close to England. That's
right
going to happen.
Yeah.
It's right there.
Well, what about you, David? How are you feeling scared or prepared?
Listen, you'd think that I would be scared, but I have no Thanksgiving to contend with, because that is not a holiday that exists over here. The expat group is putting together a Thanksgiving get-together, which they do every year. Mm-hmm. But I will report to you that I'm feeling prepared because I was not invited. That's right. I've canceled on too many social events, and now I don't get invited to things anymore.
No.
I finally won.
David,
just kidding.
We need to come to Spain and have some words, because that's not how you be sociable.
Here's the deal. There's only so many places that people can sit. They do have to draw the line somewhere. The group has like 70, 80 members in it. I am not the only person to not be invited. But I'm blissful. I am happy. I'm in my lane. I'm moisturized. I'll go buy some slices of turkey and potatoes, and I'll have my own little, just like I did in college when I didn't go home and I got a Hungry Man meal and I opened it up. And I turned on FX, and there was a marathon of the X-Files.
Nice. I love the way that you tied this in. Yeah.
Beautiful transition
circle.
Into the episode.
Full circle. That is also a true story. I got 2 Hungry Man meals, and I was like, I'm going to have my own Thanksgiving feast alone in the dorm because everyone else went home. It was great.
You're a delight.
It's perfect. I loved
Wonderful.
it. Well, as you could probably guess from all of that, today we are talking about The X-Files, which is a beloved television show created by Chris Carter. The original run of the show ran from 1993 to 2002, with 2 movies and 2 revival seasons that came out in 2016 and 2018. The show is about 2 FBI agents, Fox Mulder and Dana Scully, who are charged with investigating unusual and unsolved cases known as the X-Files that involve elements of the supernatural or paranormal.
Home was the 2nd episode of the 4th season. It was written by the beloved writing team of Glenn Morgan and James Wong, who gave the show some of its more iconic early season episodes like Squeeze, Beyond the Sea, Die Hand die Verletzt, and The Field Where I Died. It was directed by Kim Manners, another X-Files veteran who, from when he joined in Season 2 to when he left in Season 9, directed over 50 episodes of the show and produced over 155 of them. He was the most prolific director on the show, directing over a quarter of all episodes in the original run, including an episode in Season 9 called Home Again, which sadly isn't a sequel episode to this one.
Home is widely considered by the fandom to be one of the scariest episodes of the entire show. It was pulled from the network and wasn't re-aired for 3 years after the initial broadcast. And when it did finally come back, it was one of the first X-Files episodes to be rated TVMA. It does all of that while being one of the very few episodes with absolutely no supernatural elements. It's all just people. What is everyone's backgrounds and experience with the show?
Yeah, so I was a live X-Files watcher. It was sort of a appointment viewing for the household, and then later it would become just a me thing. I recorded these on tapes, just like we talked about with Gone Home. I recorded, because I was a heathen, so I would delete out commercials by pausing the recording. Now I kick myself about that. I also recorded them in the shittiest available quality so that you could record more per tape. Also, amateur mistake. I would be a hero to the internet if I had kept any of these things and recorded them in the correct versions with commercials. But alas, here we are. What's interesting is I have never watched seasons 10 and 11, despite being a huge X-Files fan and going through a rewatch during the pandemic lockdown. I would watch an episode every night in the bath after I did a crossword, and it was a delight, just a true delight.
You are a delight, David.
Yeah,
oh my God.
no, like, absolutely outstanding. That's Benoit Blanc behavior, and I'm so into it.
I mean, can I just divert to Benoit Blanc? Watching Benoit Blanc in a bathtub playing like Among Us was the most seen I've ever felt in my entire life, because that is how I loved taking baths when I had a bathtub. What about you, Marilee? I know that you're an X-Files fan.
It's true, yeah. We had a really great time.
Yeah, famously, I came to Gimmicks through Marilee's episode of Bad Blood, and so that is how I sort of even entered this world. So, Marilee, give us your history here on Fear Coded about X-Files.
Yeah, so I was not an original watcher, but like I have been aware of and a fan of X-Files my whole life. I was a little too young, but I have distinct memories of being a little kid, and my mom and my older sister would be like talking about the X-Files because they were huge fans. Like, they would watch the show together. And so, like, I always knew that the X-Files was like one of like the great TV shows. I didn't watch it myself until I was in my 20s. And I loved it. I'm obsessed with it. I also haven't watched the revival seasons. I'm not entirely sure I've even gotten to season 9 because I don't like to finish things. And I also, at that time period where I was in my life, I'm pretty sure like I moved, so like I had to stop halfway through and all of this other stuff. But the stuff that I have watched, I'm in love with. And maybe someday I'll go back, but like, I say that as if I'm not currently in the middle of an X-Files rewatch. So probably I'll watch the later seasons, but I haven't gotten there yet.
And Tyler, what about you?
Yeah.
So I enjoyed the X-Files. I didn't really watch it like as appointment viewing because I think I was a little too young to understand how that worked for anything that wasn't a cartoon. So I watched the movies and some of the episodes of the show back in the 90s. I do remember we would rent videotapes of episodes, like the best of kind of episodes, because that's what the videotapes were like back in the day. So I'd get those from Blockbuster and watch those. I watched the movies a couple times back in then as well. And in the early 2000s, it used to air like in the early evenings on FX. So like basically after I like finished my homework, the X-Files would be on. And I actually remember like I wanted to watch the X-Files on 9/11 when I was 11 years old. And so I turned on FX expecting like, okay, well, FX isn't going to have any news about 9/11, so I can watch this and distract myself, right? And then no, it was fucking Fox News coverage on FX about, 9/11, and I'm just like, I can't watch the X-Files? Oh, man.
It was everywhere.
Yeah.
This is the wildest story I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
I had no idea. That's so
they
wild.
did. I think there's like a Jersey Devil episode in the first season. I remember watching that.
It's
and
not good.
It wasn't good, but like I was a little kid that was impressionable because I was raised Catholic, so anything devil related scared the shit out of me. Mm-hmm. So that episode actually scared the shit out of me.
That's the one with the super cool drawing of the
yes,
devil.
That's right. With the lady drawing of the Jersey Devil. That's one of the things from the show I think about most frequently, if only because it will pop into my brain and I will start laughing.
Yeah. Well, of course, part of why we picked this episode is that, this episode's all about home. A lot of you may be listening to this podcast on your way home. And we want to let you know that no matter how bad the dinner you're going to is, maybe it would still be better than going to Thanksgiving dinner with the peacocks.
Yeah, there is that. Don't never forget your Thanksgiving could be a lot worse.
It could be. Or could be a lot better, depending on how you think they cut up one of these pigs. We're all ham fans. We are all ham fans, and it seems like the peacocks would be as well.
Goodness me. Well, let's start talking a little bit about more horrors tied to the peacocks. Let's go into theme time. So, one of the first themes that we want to talk about with this is rural horror. This is similar yet distinct from folk horror. In some ways, you could say that rural horror might be more akin to like an American version of folk horror, because folk horror is very tied to like old Europe or like mysterious Celtic England with something like The Wicker Man, for instance. Rural horror in this case focuses on communities and locations seemingly abandoned by society at large and left to rot. We, of course, see this in the house that the peacocks live in, that it doesn't even have electricity, doesn't even have running water, but it also looks very disused and ancient and old because apparently it was built during the Civil War. But, of course, just like the house, the family itself is also left to kind of rot and, left to its own devices. Transitioning into incest. This is a frequent theme in rural horror, though not always and not exclusively appearing in rural horror itself. This is an ultimate taboo. It shows a complete break from polite society and its rules. Like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Home also features a family that engages in incest together as a way of continuing their line away from the rest of the world. And then another final theme that we're going to be considering for this episode is the spooky old house. This is one of the OG tropes. A spooky old house is a sign that something has gone fundamentally wrong. The home is the center of our daily life, after all, and one that has become spooky is no longer a safe sanctuary from the rest of the world. Eagle-eared listeners might recognize this trope from our Gone Home episode. Told you, it's classic.
Well, let's start with rural horror, because I love that we're actually serving up rural horror realness in two separate, distinct ways. One of which is very literal, and I think we're going to spend a lot of time in the episode talking about that. But one which is almost a little bit more existential, because home itself, the name of the town where everything's located, just a real on-the-nose name.
Mm-hmm.
It also is rural to America, and I think that's an important part of the plot, and one that I'm excited to get into with all of these characters.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely the same. To me, like, rural horror presented here is really interesting because it's also not set in the deep South or Texas. Like we were just talking about that, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I think a lot of these sort of like tropey, like inbred hillbillies are more popularly seen along with like the deep South or Texas, because we kind of consider them to be backwoods in our popular culture and not really worth taking seriously, even though they are very valuable cultures of their own. It's just a stereotype that we assign to that region. So moving that up to rural Pennsylvania, which can also be, full of its own prejudices and troubles and everything else, kind of helps subvert that theme, even as we delve pretty deeply into it.
Yeah, though I do think it's interesting because it is in Pennsylvania, and that like is key. The fact that like later in the episode, like Mrs. Peacock says, like, the War of Southern, you are in Pennsylvania. What is Southern aggression nonsense?
Oh, I was so mad about this. I was so mad about this one thing.
Yeah, I feel like there must have been a rewrite at some point, and somebody didn't catch that.
The Mayberry of it all does speak that this is an Alabama town. Like, it seems almost like that move was so late, like, as you said, Marilee, because there's a couple things that thematically make a little bit more sense, even though I, like Tyler, really like that this is set
I
in
love that it's in there. And the thing about, like, the rural horror of it all to me is, like, when I think about rural horror, I think about being on the highway and seeing houses, like, dotting, and, like, they've clearly been abandoned for years, because they're, like, clearly there's nobody there. And, like, that's what I think of when I think of rural horror. Like, all of these places that have just left abandoned as society has left them behind, except that actually there were people in there, the peacock farm, the whole time, and you just didn't notice as you were driving along past. Is kind of I love that. I think it's so fun and very uniquely American.
The next time you drive by one of those, Marilee, you're going to accidentally see 3 dudes just hanging out on the porch, and you're going to scream.
I probably won't, but it's
Wait, you probably won't see them, or you probably won't scream?
either. Both.
Well, then I want to talk a little bit about the incest and the incest taboo, because I think that this is academically just a fascinating area to explore. There is this sort of documented natural aversion to seeking romantic and sexual intercourse with people that you are reared with, which we typically think about as like direct family. This is called the Westermarck effect, because that is who documented it, studying in Germany and Israel, folks who were in small clan family units and looking at children who were related, children who were not related, but were all reared together. And this is where the sort of documentation about this. And then the broader biological concern, which is that homogenesis just results in less variation and can lead to species decline. And so there is sort of a biological and evolutionary need to add diversity into the genetic code. But that all is like put aside, because most of where the taboo for this comes from is very institutional and societal. And this is the promotion of exogamy, which is about sort of getting outside of your class and family unit to seek out partners to make children. The promotion of alliance theory, which is all about how people formed new units and new families so that there would be less war or new economic opportunities. And that has driven a lot of how we look at forming family partnerships now to create children in the like formal mechanisms. But I think some cultures actually like expected brother and sister to marry, and if they were raised together, what we know from Westermarck is that like they wouldn't have enjoyed any sexual activity together if they were compulsorily made to do it.
I think all of that is so fascinating. I've never heard of these different studies and this Westermarck effect. I think that is so cool, because I think like it becomes kind of a chicken and the egg sort of situation. But I think biological aversion to, trying to be with someone that you were reared with does play into the cultural aspect of it as well, because
right,
we end up understanding like this. I have a natural aversion to this thing. That means that everyone must have it, which means this is something that we can all connect with and help form a culture with. I think it's also kind of interesting too to kind of think back to incest to protect familial heritage, which is a major motivation for the Peacocks, has precedence in like noble families in Europe, which again, not necessarily something that we're condoning, but it is just something that like this existed in Europe as a way to maintain the dynasty. But in the US, it's presented as very backwoods and wrong. And it's a taboo that is really considered like one of the worst in American culture. Like that is something that I think heteronormativity especially really holds up as like, if you're going to be with someone, then you should be with someone that's like a stranger to the family entirely. And that's part of the American dream, is that you'll meet someone, start a family, buy a house together, and raise your offspring, because that is both a biological and moral imperative. And that is endangered when the person that you meet is someone who shares your DNA, because that means that something has gone wrong in the traditional function of what you should be doing as like an American person, an American heterosexual. So I think that's where a lot of the anxiety in this episode comes from. I think it's also important too that there are racial motivations with this, because the Peacocks do say like the war, northern aggression, and even though they were up in Pennsylvania, like racism existed still like everywhere.
Yeah.
And so I don't think it's entirely unbelievable to think that some backwoods racist people would have gone to this horrific level, if we're accepting the reality that this is like a horror sort of genre.
Yeah, and I mean a slightly wider aperture, but the consolidation of sexual partners based on ethnicity with a strict standard is eugenics.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Which is like, so when that becomes less and less strict, we don't really think about it as eugenics so much as other cultural things. But like, strictly speaking, the peacocks are engaged in eugenics to continue their family line as they see it, which is ultimately destroying them.
Yeah.
Last thing, creepy old house. Tyler mentioned Gone Home. I just got to say, for anybody who listened to the episode and were like, this wasn't scary. Well, this house is scary because there's literal death traps all over the place.
Oh, yeah. No, like they booby trapped the hell out of that place.
I was not expecting the booby traps. That was an additional layer that was like giving barbarian vibes.
You've seen this? You talked about seeing this episode before. Did you just like forget that this existed, or?
Oh no, I actually had not seen this episode before.
What?
Okay, so my whole deal with the X-Files, like I was saying, is like I watched a lot of them like on videotapes that would be like the best of the X-Files from Blockbuster. So I never have actually seen the whole show from beginning to end. Up until like in the last year, I've started and stopped and started and stopped an X-Files sort of rewatch, because it turns out I've seen a lot of the first season, but not so much like the second and third season, and then I've seen maybe 1 or 2 episodes of like the later seasons. But yeah, no, I didn't know about this episode. I knew that there were like I knew that there was like an incest hillbilly situation going on, that it was like their version of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I did not realize that it was basically like barbarian.
Wow. Because what's interesting is that this would today be recognized as one of the best episodes of The X-Files. But when those VHSs were being put out, there would be no way on earth that this would have made the cut.
Yeah.
No. Oh, that's so interesting. I had no, especially because you were the one who suggested doing this, right?
I did, yeah, because I was just like, well, it's Thanksgiving, we should do something family-oriented, and what's more familial than keeping within the family?
Wow. Well, then, it's time to get to our criteria for the podcast. First and foremost, is it horror? The X-Files is a well-known science fiction procedural. Why are we discussing it in a horror podcast? Is this as scary as people say?
Yeah, I think it's definitely horror. I love it whenever the X-Files, like, does mundane horror that's just as terrifying as the supernatural horror. I think a lot of that comes through with the government conspiracy aspects of the show, because it is like, this is people hurting or hunting down other people for trying to discover the truth, and that's scary on its own. But it's when it's something like this where the monster of the week is truly like the monster is a person, that shit is freaky as hell. So no wonder it's so good.
Yeah. No, I like this episode a lot. It did not scare me per se, but I say if this isn't horror, then I don't know what is.
Yeah, that's fair. This is a very scary episode. I think there's excellent creature effects and props.
Oh my god, yeah.
The infant, and it's like a second, if it's even that. Maybe it's 20 frames, but it's grotesque. It is amazing. Everyone's reactions to it are really good. And I think what you're afraid of in this episode tells me a lot about who you are. And I think that's very interesting.
Oh, this is fun. You're gonna have to expound on this later.
Yeah.
I refuse.
Yeah, we have to consider something else, which is it queer? And let me just throw a file across your desk. Ever heard of shipping, Scully? With a show whose legacy is partially based on a seemingly cis heterosexual pairing, famously called The Mothership, Mulder and Scully. How can we possibly discuss this show in the concepts of queer theory?
Well, I feel like I am a broken record, but I do have to repeat that once again, if you try hard and believe in yourself, anything can be queer. So
And
jot that down.
To this, Marilee, I must present the first barrier to that theory, because I cannot accept a queer reading of Mulder the Man, because I just feel like his character needs to be the very model of a modern major heterosexual.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. Thank you so much for that. What a fun little what's the it's the George Washington Pirates of the Penzance, right? No?
Pinafore. No. HMS Pinafore.
Yeah.
Modern Major General.
Yeah. That's okay. You can cut that whole thing out. That's dumb. Anyway, thank you. I enjoyed it. You don't need to keep it.
We'll never cut out Gilbert and Sullivan.
That is what I was looking for. I couldn't remember their names.
This is a gay podcast.
How Aaron Sorkin of you, David.
Gross. I worked Pinafore. That was my first community theater production.
Yeah.
Thank you very
and
much.
I definitely see what you're talking about, especially there's that really excellent episode Humbug where
yes.
God.
Tyler, I don't know if you remember, but
I have not seen Humbug.
Okay, well, they're at the circus. Scully is talking to one of the freaks, so-called, in the circus show, and he is just reading Mulder for filth. And the camera cuts to Fox Mulder with his leg up, just all American boy. And that is such a central thesis of this show, which is this man who is, I must remind us all, unfortunately, a cop, who is coming into these unusual circumstances and situations. And we see him as the hero because he's our hero. But if you truly start to dissect Mulder, he is plain white Wonder Bread with the crust cut off. If you want queerness, it's in this series. I will give it to you all day long, but it is not in Baby Fox Mulder's hands.
I agree.
Yeah.
I will admit, so I guess it's weird to think of me as like the X-Files newbie, because like I personally never thought that. My like I had like a little action figure of Mulder and Scully. Like I don't know, I think I was like more interested in like the aesthetics of the show than the actual plot, because everything was aliens.
That's fair. They do rule.
Yeah, so I'm in real major agreement with David here, because having started doing like a proper watch of the series, I'm honestly shook by how much of like a straightforward heterosexual, like does sports, flirts with women, is like classically handsome Fox Mulder is. Like he's so, but he also, I agree with David, he kind of has to be like the all-American good boy, Boy Scout type, because it's interesting to watch him be that, yet also put into a situation where like being the all-American good boy is not a world that you can survive in, and yet he's able to persevere through, you know, his desire for truth, and you know, relying on Scully to really save the day. Because at the end of the day, we all agree that Gillian Anderson is like our personal queer hero.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Even though, like, again, like they are so heterosexual, it's ridiculous.
Scully could be bisexual. You don't know that.
I think their relationship is extremely heterosexual. That's what I'm trying to say. Because they are the mothership. Like, it is just, like, he's, like, really cool and suave and, like, has, like, a secret dark side about, like, his angst over his sister. And then Scully is, like, very prim and proper and professional, but she has so much passion underneath. And that combination is just so chef's kiss. It's such, like, a perfect, like, kind of ideal for the 90s heterosexual relationship to, like, really kind of fawn over, even if, like, Gillian Anderson, like, herself is a queer icon for so many of us. I actually don't know. Is Gillian Anderson, like, queer?
Yeah.
Is she bi?
I believe
she's openly talked about being bisexual.
I actually did not know that. That is brand new information to me. So hella even more reasons to love Gillian Anderson. And I'm all for hearing how Scully is bisexual, because that would make me love the show even more.
I'm telling you now, she is. But also, you know, it's so funny that you guys talk about how Mulder is like this all-American boy, and I do agree. But like on another level, and I know David has some really good analysis like written down about this that I'm gonna let him deliver in a second. But I do think, like, textually, at least in some level, Mulder has to be at least slightly queered because of, like, the way that he's thought of in the FBI, like his whole spooky Mulder shtick. It's like, I just think that, like, even though Mulder the man might be considered a heterosexual, I can't think Mulder the figure is. You know what I mean?
Yep. And I buy that. I buy that copy, and I will reprint it merrily. That is absolutely textually correct. There's this Mulder in his role with the X-Files is queer. Mulder, agent of the FBI outside of the X-Files, is not. And we see that when he's pulled off the X-Files, which happens a couple of times, and he almost becomes like this sad shell of a man because the X-Files are part of his identity. And so in that way, he needs that sort of queer tether. And the X-Files themselves, queer all day long, kept in the fucking basement. That's a closet analogy. Seeking the truth. God, aren't we all? Putting up slideshows of things. That's gay.
Yeah.
All of that. I totally, and frankly, to be honest with you, whole rest of the cast are homosexuals, bisexuals, pansexuals, or queer characters in some other way. Mitch Pileggi as Skinner, hello, daddy.
Oh yeah.
John Doggett, gay. Monica Reyes, fabulous lesbian. Like the series is very, and I think the series is very, very queer. But I do think that in order to sell the idea that your chief investigator is a man, they have to almost overdo it with Mulder's compulsory heterosexuality as Mulder the man. And I think that is so fascinating for the role that he takes. And I think telling the story differently would make you have to rethink the characters from the ground up.
I think it's also kind of interesting in that regard to think about Mulder as being kind of an effeminate version of such like a manly man, because so much of his life is ruled by women. His whole search for truth is motivated by his missing sister. Scully is his partner. She is equal to him in every way. I think those are two of the most important elements in his life. I think, again, I'm not super far into the show, so I don't know how important Skinner becomes to Mulder as a form of influence. But the two people, at least at this point in the show, that I think have the most sway over Mulder's life is his sister and Scully. So it's kind of interesting to also see that he is not a toxic masculine man. He takes care of himself. He presents himself well. He dresses very nicely. He's like, if he's slovenly, it's almost in a way that's like kind of enticing to look at. I guess maybe I'm biased because I'm a gay person that's into people who look at Mulder. But like, I think there's a lot to kind of play with, and I think, yeah, it's an interesting dynamic, and it's no wonder, like, I feel like the X-Files itself is, like, very popular among, like, bisexual people. Like, I think it's Gillian's, like, presence there, but also Mulder is just such, like, he's just hot. Like, I don't know why, there's just some 90s, the Riz is about him.
Okay, I have 2 points that I'd like to just bring up real quick. First and foremost, it's, again, I keep going back to your statement that he is like this manly man, and like I don't disagree, but I also, especially like in the context of when the show was airing, I wonder if men of the time would look at Mulder and see one of like a really tough guy, because he was so intellectual, and like I don't think that men at that time would look at him and think that he was manly or buff or anything.
No, I don't think that either, but I think perhaps it's that intellectual curiosity in a time period where like the intellect was very much like, I think, celebrated. I'm veering hard into late 90s nostalgia territory, so the rose-colored glasses might be on. But I do think that this was an era where like men who were masculine were instead very well-dressed, kind of yuppies, very professional. They had, a very nice watch, and they were business people. So I think Mulder does kind of fit that vibe a little bit, because I think he does present himself pretty well.
Yeah, that's true. My only other thing is Alex Krycek. Anyway, carry on.
Krycek.
Yeah.
I mean, a focus of my dreams, merely, but that's because I had a villain thing.
I'm just saying, there's a very, very heterosexual relationship between Mulder and Krycek, certainly. And I'm not kidding at all. That's... I'm on the record. I think that if the show was coming out right now, the fan cams for like the Krycek girlies would have with like shipping Mulder and Krycek would be insane.
Let's talk about this episode, because I actually think there's a lot of queer in this episode. I know we're going to talk about it beat by beat, but just at a high level, does this episode contribute to sort of the queer theory that we look for in evaluating a piece of media for the podcast?
I think so. I think that any small town with a dark secret is inherently queer. No matter what that secret might be.
Fully 100% agreed. I think the subject matter in the episode kind of shows, like, if we were to take heterosexuality to its most, like, grotesque extreme, that is, like, it is the human primal urge to reproduce. and that is a fact that everyone has to believe in. That is something that the Peacocks adhere to. However, it has been twisted into this, like, we also have to keep our bloodline pure, and it has to maintain the heritage of it all. And I think that is just as threatening to, like, the heteronormative aspect of our culture as it would be to any other, like, queer presentation of something that is threatening to the culture.
I love the way that you put that. That's really smart.
Thank you. I thought it sounded like gibberish coming out of my mouth.
Oh my god.
David just rolled his eyes because I just need to stop second-guessing myself.
Don't second-guess yourself.
You're so smart.
If you second-guess yourself in this house, you will end up beheaded.
Oh my God, you're right. You're right.
Yeah. So, speaking of beheading, let's talk about homes.
Oh my god. Let's. Marilee, what trauma brought on that segue?
Well, it happens later in this very episode, so... While we might have explored the nuances of going or goning home before in our wonderful episode all about the video game Gone Home, this episode is obsessed with the different meanings of home, and we should talk about it. From the name of the town to home plate in the beginning baseball game to the Peacock homestead, home is a physical place, certainly, but it's more than that. Mulder talks about settling down and building a home in a place like this someday. Both Sheriff Taylor and Mrs. Peacock talk about being afraid of losing their homes from change they know is coming and try and prevent it somehow. The word home is said 20 times in this 44-minute episode. If you want to count house, it adds an extra 3. And, like, there are other things as well. Like, people talk about properties. Mulder, like, talks about their home as a den twice. What exactly is home trying to say about homes?
First of all, just huge props to Marilee for just, like, tallying these. This is the work of a true fan of the X-Files.
Yes, yeah, no, I watched the episode an extra time, and I just sat there and I was like, where are they saying it? And it was a little bit easier than I thought it would be, because most of these come in, like, chunks where they'll say home, like, 2 or 3 times next to each other, so it's eye-catching. But there's, like, a stray one every now and then you just gotta catch.
Yeah.
I'm so proud of you for going that extra mile.
Thank you.
I think there is so much to talk about here, from the nature of the nuclear family, from the ideas of conservatism and a unwillingness to change, to concepts around motherhood that get brought up both casually and I think very relevantly to the plot, and this overarching and a little bit off-putting when the dialogue first gets introduced, idea of technology as an enemy of traditionalism, and how forward progression is coming for you, and that's the real monster of the week is progress. And I just think that this conversation about the idea and nature of home is going to take us in a lot of these different directions.
I'm totally with you on that. I love also the bit right before Sheriff Taylor shows up in the episode where Scully talks about how Mulder, if he missed his cell phone, he would go schizophrenic in like 5 minutes. And it's like, wow, that's kind of ahead of its time for a line like that. But well, it's so much worse now. Just
to add clarity, it was such a novelty that they had cell phones on the show. It was considered almost like avant-garde for them to be able to access their phones.
I think we should also consider something that's extremely part of the 90s context of this episode is the coming millennium.
Wait, do you mean the spin-off show to the X-Files?
No, very good, David, but no, not that millennium. But the millennium itself, the time frame that we're talking about, in which we went from 1999 to 2000 or 2000 to 2001, depending on how specific you want to get with it. But think about it, like, for those of us that were alive in the 90s and very conscious of everything going on, the millennium was kind of a cultural divide between like this comfortable certainty of the late 20th century, where we had moved past the fraught 60s and 70s of Vietnam into the more sedate, for the mass majority of straight people, late 80s and 90s, And we move into the mysterious 21st century. No one really knew what was going to happen. We were worried about Y2K. As the 90s were wrapping up, was this going to be like a major problem? Was this going to be the end of everything? Is the apocalypse coming? There was a lot of anxiety generated about that and a lot of conversation about it in the mid to late 90s. Like, we even talked about it in our Scream episode a couple weeks ago about, that's might be one of the motivations that they come up with. That's just like, it's the millennium. It's driving us crazy. So I think that fear of like, I want to take one last look at how things are before everything changes is definitely a part of the conversation that's being had in that 90s zeitgeist.
Yeah.
That's really
think
smart.
that's so pertinent to every conversation that's happening today. There is this forward momentum, and it is not as if something big changed on December 31st, 1999 or December 31st, 2000 that automatically changed the next day. But it is the recognition that at some point in time in history, a line is drawn and you existed behind the line and you existed past the line. And even though maybe you didn't change and your immediate environment didn't change, history will remember you as change. And I think that Y2K is actually a really good example of this. And I don't remember if you both were scared of Y2K happening.
I was like vaguely aware that it was happening, so I was a little anxious about it.
I think part of that fear is that, first of all, like, we thought computers were going to rise up like Terminator style and annihilate us. That was never going to happen. Like, some Excel spreadsheets were not going to open. Everyone calm down. But the problem is that the issue was that we were just going to get to a date where that problem was going to happen. And that is the fear of the inevitable. And that is an existential fear, because no matter what you do, you cannot stop clocks from moving forward. And eventually they will move forward to this anticipated date when computers won't work anymore, except that a bunch of people did their jobs really, really well and there was no issue whatsoever. But inevitability and these lines that history draws, I think, are so pertinent to this broader fear that we see in this episode, and that I think is like the final line to this episode.
Mm-hmm.
God, you're so smart. I hadn't even thought about that, like, at all as a possible theme in this. And, I'm thrilled by you guys. That's so smart.
Yeah. Well, then let's get into the episode beat by beat. The episode begins with a woman giving birth during a thunderstorm with 3 other people in the room. It's so dark that it's hard for us to see them, but the glimpses we do see show physical abnormalities. As the baby is crying, all 3 of the men take it outside, dig a hole in the mud, and bury it, while one sobs audibly during the storm. Then the excellent title sequence plays. After that, we cut back to the exact same spot where a group of neighborhood kids are playing baseball. A ball goes into the nearby Peacock property, but the kids pull out a spare ball rather than trying to retrieve the old one. Then the body is discovered.
Like, from the jump, this episode really establishes itself and its tone, and I, for one, was really immediately along for the ride.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it felt very movie-like in quality, but it also felt like kind of B-horror as well. Just like, oh, there's some mysterious stuff happening. Oh, they're burying something out in the mud. It's certainly spooky. The baseball scene, it's also feels very emblematic of the X-Files. I think there's a heavy focus on nostalgia for a time gone by before all of these conspiracies were present in the characters' lives and before things were too complicated, back in an era where, kids could go play baseball, and baseball itself was really romantic because, at that time we were having a lot of baseball movies talking about the romance of baseball. And so by proxy, baseball itself became kind of like a magical thing that is part of our American identity. And so, of course, it's going to be shown in the X-Files. And then, of course, it's going to be thrown for a loop when these children who are engaging in something that, the writers of the show may have done as children. It becomes so horrifying when blood seeps up out of the ground and stains one of the kids' shoes.
Yeah,
what a great shot.
Oh god, the whole scene is so effective. First of all, the kids are creepy as fuck. These are creepy children, and it's because they're all Mayberry cast-offs. Like that, Like we're starting the visual symbolism that we get from these children playing baseball and playing it with these sort of like old bases that seem to have been around since Barney Fife was patrolling the streets. Like this really delivers all of that. And then it takes a shift into horror by having just gooey blood, and we, the audience, having sort of the advantage over the dramatic irony of the characters, knowing what they found because we know what was buried.
Yeah. Can we talk about the opening credits for a second?
God, can we, Marilee?
Please.
Can we?
Please?
Oh my God, I love the opening credits to the X-Files.
They're so
much.
good.
They're so good.
This song was the reason that I talked about this on the Scream episode, but the reason that I bought the CD, Songs in the Key of X, is that not only was there the Mark Snow version, which is longer and gets more fun, I would say, in the second half, which you don't hear in the opening credits, which is fine. But there were 3 dance mixes of the opening credits. That made me gay. So the X-Files is queer.
Yeah.
Including one that you had to start on the first track and rewind to track 0 to access, in that it was a hidden track on the CD. And this was incredible. I love these credits. I love the spooky stuff that is happening. I think it instantly makes every episode of the X-Files a little scarier just because these credits exist.
A, you're right. B, this is the greatest CD of all time, and I'm furious I don't have it.
Sheryl Crow is on it. Like, I told Tyler on the Scream episode that you can't find this on Spotify, which is true. A fan has made a playlist of every available song that you can access on Spotify.
Hero. But, like, does it have the Secret Zero song?
It does not.
Then what good is it to me?
It does not. It has none of the dance remixes. Only the Mark Snow original, which is still a banger.
Okay,
yeah,
but
listen.
Can we also talk about how the theme song showed up on Pure Moods?
What?
Okay, so for our non-90s baby audiences that are listening to this podcast, Pure Moods was a real soundtrack or a real CD that you could buy. The advertisements for it showed up during Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network and pretty much were just everywhere at the time. That held a whole bunch of new agey songs on there, but there were some songs that were just kind of a choice, and one of them was the theme song to The Exorcist, which is very famously not a very chill, calming yoga sort of song. And they had the X-Files theme on there. And I think it actually was a dance remix as well.
What?
Wow.
Yeah.
This is incredible because I could just imagine like being kind of in a chill yoga state, listening to some Yanni, and then all of a sudden it's like boop 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 boop. That's scary. That is terrifying.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, but would it be scary if you didn't know the context that it was the X-Files theme? If this was the 90s and you never watched the X-Files and you were in a yoga class and this song came on, would you have been scared of it?
Yes.
Yes.
Because it does the do 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 do. It's
the minor
unnerving.
chords. The minor chords are scary. Those are the scary chords, Marilee.
They're the scary chords.
Yeah.
I had to ask. I accept your statement. But that's thrilling. Thank you so much for that added knowledge,
Now,
Tyler.
Here's the real question.
Okay.
Truth. I need truth from both of you. I need you to be in a true and vulnerable space. Have you meowed the X-Files theme while watching the show?
I've not meowed it, but I will now.
That is incredible to me because I think everyone should meow the X-Files theme. Meow, 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 meow. Meow, 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 meow.
Amazing.
This may have
gonna
just
be doing that
changed
from now
everything.
on. Yeah. Game changer.
By the way, I think you should do it with every TV credits. So
Meow 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 meow
See?
meow.
we are rewatching Lost right now, and every time that big Lost symbol comes up, I just go meow.
Meow.
See? That's all you need.
Oh, but now it sounds like the Among Us noise.
That's okay. That's okay. You can meow in Among Us too.
Yeah, you sure can. Anyway, back to the actual episode.
Sorry, we're really unserious today, guys.
we're recording this at a weird time than we normally do.
We're weird people already.
We're weird people already. It's all coming together. Anyway, so while Mulder admires the eau de ball, the perfume of the baseball, and waxes poetic about his childhood, Scully investigates the hole where the body was left. She's actually doing her job. Sheriff Taylor arrives and thanks them for coming, especially since this isn't technically FBI jurisdiction, but the town of Home has never had a crime like this and wouldn't know where to start. Mulder asks about the peacocks, who are watching from the porch of their nearby house, but Sheriff Taylor is reluctant to question them. They're a very insular family that has lived on that property since the Civil War, with little to no contact with the outside world. They don't even have running water or electricity, and they didn't even get medical treatment when Mr. and Mrs. Peacock presumably died in a car accident 10 years ago. Sheriff Taylor implies that the family practiced inbreeding and refuses to let them go talk to the peacocks, saying they wouldn't understand Mulder and Scully's questions anyway.
Yeah, it's funny because Mulder steps right into this like he's one of the kids playing baseball.
Mm-hmm.
The baseball is him. He is the baseball. When he was a child, he dreamt of growing up and becoming a baseball. This is honestly, it's more fodder for me about this whole like Mulder has to be America in order to sell his sort of like man out of water with the X-Files, even though the X-Files are like his baby. It's interesting because only in episodes like this and Humbug, which we talked about earlier, which again, fantastic episode, do you get this much of a swing for Mulder to get this way? But I get it, and I understand for the plot of the episode and the series as a whole why that has to be done.
Yeah, and I definitely am with you there, but personally, I find Mulder's reminiscing a little disingenuous. Because maybe things were different when he was a kid, like maybe in that time period. I don't know. I wasn't there. But I find the idea of a pickup baseball game in Martha's Vineyard a little far-fetched.
That's fair.
Yeah, they got it.
Sorry,
what happens?
I'm a hater.
What happens if the ball falls in the water? It's going to get eaten by a shark.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Amity, as you know, means friendship.
Well, I also feel like part of this is like part of the scene and something that kind of rubs me the wrong way with some of these earlier episodes of the X-Files. Well, I say early, this is season 4, but still, it's just that Mulder, we kind of have to be reminded that Mulder is straight and he's also with Scully, and Scully's like, she's so motherly, and, you know, maybe she'll want to have a future husband who, like, constantly has to argue with his wife or something like that, whatever it is that he says. It's just kind of like, part of this, like, I feel like if this were written today, we would not get this sort of interaction between Mulder and Scully where Mulder kind of comments on, like, Scully's femininity in this way that fits, like, gender stereotypes for what a woman should be. And that kind of thing bothers me, but it's just kind of a byproduct of its time. So I don't really cling to it all that well. But I think it is just another reminder that Mulder is very much, like, he's a straight man. He's kind of performing as a straight man. We got to maintain that heteronormative ideal that is Mulder the straight man. So that is just something that kind of sticks out to me.
Okay, can I push back on that just a little bit?
Yes, please. I want that. I want that so bad.
Okay, because the thing is, I do think that you're right, but the way that he doesn't say, like, argue with your husband. He says specifically, like, somebody who will, you know, tolerate, like, he says something along the lines of, like, tolerate being managed or something. And, like, and that's not great. But the way he says specifically, pop out those little Uber Scullys, and, well, not great. That reminded me a lot of his comment in the first season where he just assumes that Scully will be in charge of the FBI in 30 years. Like him just assuming that, yeah, they'll be like you, they'll be Uber Scullys because you're the best part of whoever else you'll be with. And I do think that he respects her immensely. And something about the Uber Scully of it all to me kind of spoke of that respect in a weird turn, like circular kind of way.
Yeah, and I don't think Mulder, like, disrespects Scully at all. Like, I definitely never, ever get that vibe in the show, and that's not who these characters are. But I think it is just, like, it's kind of just, this is how they talked in the 90s.
Yeah, I think the 90s are just respecting Scully, but, like, it's not necessarily Mulder's fault.
Right.
That the 90s existed.
Thank you. That's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
I also just want to say that while I do like Sheriff Taylor, it's almost despite myself. I think it has a lot to do with like the actor's chemistry, who's really phenomenal. But like the thing is, that the way that he tells the story and about them not wanting the town to change after telling Mulder and Scully that they've known and like have knowingly let a family do this for like 100 years is absolutely buck wild. Like, I'm so sorry, my man, this is not the perfect like town that you think it is. And he does things like a couple times, I'll point out another one pretty soon, but like where I'm just like, I don't get how, like, your character is a very contradictory situation for me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think that's kind of interesting. I think that's a really cool call out, honestly, because I think it kind of reveals a little bit more about this sheriff's mindset and how maybe home was never as idyllic as it was purported to be. I think if your mentality as like the lawkeeper, he's a cop, but like if he's the one that's supposed to be like the figurehead of everything that is the authority in this town, if he's going to be morally corrupted in this way and think like I'm part of this legacy of my own that is okay with the Peacocks doing what they've been doing, then automatically it's been rotten from the core. The home has been a rotten place from the start.
Yeah.
I think another thing to kind of talk about too is about Sheriff Taylor is that there's a lot of fun with Sheriff Taylor, Andy Taylor, in this episode because he's got the same name as Andy Griffith's character in the Andy Griffith Show, which again for like younger audiences that might not know, the Andy Griffith Show, Andy Griffith was an actor from like the 50s and 60s, and he had his own show where he was the sheriff of a town called Mayberry, and it was depicted as like the ideal small town America. No one really gets up to any sort of like major mischief. There's no major crimes or anything. Everyone's like pretty wholesome and ideal, and your neighbor will share a cup of sugar with you if you come asking for it. But Andy Taylor was the sheriff, and then we had Barney Fife, who was kind of like the comic deputy, sort of, what's the word?
Hapless, idiotic, fail son.
Sorry.
I was thinking comic relief, but yeah, we can go with those two. Jester,
fool, minion. But I mean the yellow ones, not like the word minion.
Yeah. But then so Mulder makes a joke that the Barney deputy that we meet in town is Barney Fife, but then that deputy very grumpily corrects him and says that his last name is Pastor. So there's Mulder has always kind of been like a wise ass in this show, and that's just a little bit more of his character trait shining through.
Mulder would make a great podcaster because he also has deep cultural knowledge, which is never useful to the plot. Here's the deal. I think that choosing to name the character Andy Taylor and evoking so much of the Mayberry of this then does us a little bit of an interesting service. I was going to say disservice, and then I changed it to interesting service of having the role played by Tucker Smallwood. And I think this is where the 90s so-called colorblind casting, where they said, we'll give roles to anyone and we won't care what their race is. I think that Smallwood's race adds a dynamic to Andy Taylor's character that is not present in this script, and that makes the story different.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe in a worse way, but I think we'll talk about it as we continue to go on.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. I just, the actor who plays Andy Taylor, he really does a phenomenal job.
Oh my God.
And I really, all the props to him, because on paper, I should hate this man, but I don't. I really like him.
Tucker Smallwood, I mean, character actor for years.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Showed up in Smallville. I mean, I'm sure he showed up in Smallville. He had a nice little run on Supernatural. Like, he has been in everything.
Truly, like,
seen.
everything.
Yeah,
like, I feel
everything.
like if you're a major TV watcher, you have seen him in something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at the police station, Mulder and Scully briefly meet Deputy Pastor before going into a tiny itty bitty bathroom Sheriff Taylor has picked out for Scully to autopsy the victim. Mulder asks if they could use his office, but Taylor doesn't ever lock the door to his office and doesn't want them to go in there with the door locked because somebody could drop by and a rumor might start. Scully is horrified at the body of the baby, as it displays signs of every rare birth defect possible. Mulder thinks that this might mean that the infant died of natural causes, but Scully confirms that it was buried alive. Outside, Mulder and Scully discuss the mother's potential state of mind, as well as have a little flirt about their genetics and the possibility of Scully in a motherly role. Getting serious, Scully tells Mulder her theory. The victim would have to be the result of several generations of inbreeding, so the peacocks have to be the suspects. And as all of the women in the family are dead, kidnapping is a federal crime. The FBI do have jurisdiction to keep investigating.
Yeah, I love how efficiently we're taking care of some story here. And it's all on Scully's shoulders, girl.
Yeah.
She's got to be the one to be like, it's okay for the FBI to investigate this small town because of kidnapping, which I love. I think writers are very concerned with answering this question. I don't know that I don't know that I as an audience member have ever been like, why are the FBI here? It's Mulder and Scully's show. They can be wherever they want. I don't need that answer every time.
It's like they were preceding like internet annoying people now who would be like, why are they in this small town? The FBI doesn't have regulation here. Woke.
It's fine.
That's so funny. They do answer that question earlier in the episode too, because the sheriff specifically is like, hey, thanks for coming down. I know you didn't need to be here. So
procedural questions are kind of brought up a lot in this episode too, because they don't initially go into the Peacock house either because they don't have just cause.
That's fine.
Which I did like very much, actually.
I also appreciated that, but it was just like a lot of references to like proper procedure in this episode.
In a procedural, I'm shocked, Tyler.
Well,
literally the name
David.
of the title. I'm sorry.
But
do you think we just throw this word around for no reason? That's the whole point of these types of television.
Okay,
have you never watched NCIS? This is all they do.
I don't watch NCIS. I didn't watch Law and Order. I haven't watched any of these cop shows. But I think it's just interesting. I think it's interesting that they're not being depicted as like reckless cops who don't obey the rules, which you might have seen in some of these 90s police procedural shows.
Well, not if they were good, because they follow the procedure. Jag, Bones, I could go on and on.
I haven't seen any of these shows.
That's because they're all the same show.
Yeah.
I've just got to talk about this. So they go in, Sheriff Taylor is like, sorry, we don't have a morgue because, we're like
a small town.
We're like a one Starbucks town.
It's a Dunkin'.
No Starbucks town.
In Pennsylvania, I would buy that. They show Scully into like a small washroom. And I think from a horror perspective, this turns the dial up a lot because it adds confinement to the space as well. It looked awful for filming, but I think that it really delivered on a higher creep factor for the episode.
100%, yes. And it tells us so much more. Like, honestly, a lot of this scene tells us so much about the town of home and what everyone's morality is. Like, the sheriff doesn't lock his office door because he doesn't want to start rumors. They don't have a morgue. They don't have a place where they can do, an autopsy. So they shove her, all three of them, into a tiny half bathroom.
Yeah. Well, listen. While we're talking about the sheriff, let me just throw out my big complaint here. Because, again, the Taylor is just rubbing me the wrong way. The way he prioritizes not wanting people to spread rumors over the infant victim, I find extremely distasteful. It just really it shows again and again the way that things are not as idyllic in home as like the sheriff wants it to be. And I do think that adds a fun little wrinkle. I do like Pastor though; he's cool.
Yeah, Pastor's excellent. I think that this is starting to get at the thesis point that I brought up earlier, that Taylor is a tool of maintaining the status quo. And to acknowledge that an infant was murdered in their town would be creeping towards a new norm for the city of home, the town of home, the village of home, the hamlet, whatever this is, unincorporated home. That's like his job, is to keep things rolling as they always have been and not allow interruption. And so that makes sense to me. I don't like it, like, personally, because I love progress. But I do see the justification for it.
Oh yeah, no, like I get it. I think it adds a fun narrative wrinkle. I just wanted to say it because I watched this episode like 3 or 4 times, and it just every time I got madder and madder about this.
Well, I mean, I think we should very clearly say we are, full in on ACAB. Like,
yeah.
Like, so the idea that Taylor himself is perpetrating violence by not communicating this, it's intentionally distasteful, or if not intentionally distasteful by the show writers, it certainly is distasteful to a modern audience who it has, many people have learned to consider the cops as not being a Barney Fife, Andy Griffith sort of friendly force to rely on.
Yeah.
And on that note, I think Taylor himself is such like a great representation about the American dream not being achievable. Home is supposed to be this ideal all-American town, but if Taylor is maintaining the status quo, which includes the violence that is perpetrated by the Peacocks, and just the incest and the secrecy and everything else, I think that is, again, displaying that this all-American dream, America has always been rotten at its core. And, again, we talked briefly about race, and we will definitely talk more about that with Taylor, but I think also it shows, like, that it doesn't necessarily matter what race you are. If you are in a position where you can maintain the status quo, if you choose to maintain that status quo, you are perpetrating violence. So further into the episode, we see Mulder and Scully head to the Peacock homestead, but don't find anyone there. The vibes are odd, with a decapitated pig head on the front steps and several classic cars strewn around the lawn, including a beautiful white Cadillac convertible. From the doorway, Mulder and Scully see blood all over the kitchen and scissors in a pool of blood on the table, which gives them probable cause to enter and search the house. Inside, they find more than enough evidence to convict the Peacocks of infanticide, but no sign of the brothers or the mother. While inside, they talk about getting Sheriff Taylor to get a warrant for the Peacocks' arrest as they investigate potential kidnapping victims based on the cars left in the yard. Unknown to both of them, however, the camera pans over to a pair of eyes in the dark as someone listens to their conversation. Creepy.
No, that was very scary.
Very, very scary.
I mean, the house effectively does all the things you need a television filmed creepy house to do. You've poked some holes in like black cardboard paper and hung it up, and that creates an excellent lighting effect where some light's getting in, but it's very, very dark, and that just gives a sense of disuse to it. It's the same way they make stars in Star Trek too, which is kind of fun. But the slow stalking pan to this hidden person's eyes was like, that scared me.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen this episode probably half dozen times.
It's very frightening. It is very reminiscent of like a 70s kind of horror, which I think is intentional because, the creators talked about this being like kind of a response to The Hills Have Eyes, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This shot in particular also just kind of reminded me of the eyes of Pazuzu, the demon in The Exorcist, which we only ever see very, very quick cuts of, like 1 second, if that, to just kind of like subtly unnerve you. It's very, very dramatic, and it definitely kind of nails exactly what it is that they're trying to evoke.
I love that. I just no notes, 10 out of 10, this rolled.
Yeah.
David, I was going to ask you, so we've talked a lot about Gone Home, but I also am really reminded of the house in Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. Because that is also a really decrepit, disused really gross house that is run by a very fucked up family with a protagonist that is searching for a missing woman. And I think, that is another game that really goes and pays attention to that heritage of fucked up houses in a story and how they can terrify you. Like, I think PT obviously is owed a huge credit to that particular game, but I mean, it's all part of that same legacy of a fucked up creepy house and how the home is no longer a safe sanctuary for you.
Are you encouraging us to cover it for the podcast so that you can scare me with Resident Evil 7 Biohazard?
I have not played Resident Evil 7 Biohazard because I'm too scared to play it. So
oh my god, you haven't played it?
It's too scary.
You know what Marilee's next pick for the podcast is going to be right now.
I brought this on myself. I brought this on ourselves.
You literally did. Here I was sitting quietly. I hadn't even thought about that as a connection. I did Google it, by the way. PT did come out in 2014. Resident Evil 7 came out in 2017. So there is possible that it was influenced by that.
Well, anyway, listen. I got to get back to the eyes. The eyes are doing something really important for amping up a horror. And that is they are looking directly at the camera.
Mm-hmm.
And eye contact, there's some cultural reasons that it's not appropriate, but in most spaces within family units, clans, and acceptable stranger engagement is meant to be calming and a sign of being heard and listened to. In television and film, a character making eye contact with you, the viewer, is upsetting. It is always why characters look to the side, or it is played for comedy because it's upsetting, but then it's comedic, like a break the fourth wall sort of situation. And I think that's why both this and Pazuzu, because I remembered that when you brought it up, Tyler, that's really scary for something to look at you, even though it can't really see you, but there's a part of your like poor little lizard brain that can't quite get that fast. So your immediate thought is, oh no, it's on me. And I think that's really cool.
That's such an interesting call out as well, because that kind of reminds me of another piece of DNA to the X-Files, The Silence of the Lambs.
Yes.
In that movie, all of the characters, at least at some point, speak directly into the camera, even though they may be addressing another character at that time.
Most of the time, they're talking specifically to Clarice Starling when that happens.
Yep.
You know what I loved though is that you called her Scully.
I did. Would you like to know my favorite fact? This is one of the things I love the most.
Tell me.
So for the movie Hannibal, our beloved person whose name I cannot remember at the top of my head, and I'm gonna kill myself. I'm trying.
Julianne Moore.
No, Julianne Moore is who we're going to get to. We're not talking about her. We're talking about
Jodie Foster.
Yes, thank you. I was trying so hard to vamp and remember. My brain was just not getting there.
I got you.
So Jodie Foster didn't want to come and be in Hannibal, so they had they needed to recast Clarice Starling. They wanted Gillian Anderson, but it was in her contract for the X-Files that she could not play another female FBI agent, so she had to not participate, and that's why Julianne Moore got cast.
Wow.
That is so rude, because if you watch the pilot to the X-Files, that is Clarice Starling.
Yeah.
100%.
Like 100%.
Scully
and
that padded worst outfit she's ever been in.
I liked her pilot outfit.
It's just so 90s. That's why I really like it. It's just,
on a drag queen, absolutely. On Gillian Anderson, no. No, ma'am.
Her hair
no, ma'am.
was cut like a football helmet, David. She was ready for battle.
Yeah, and
No.
I like that she put on like basically armor to go and talk to like these people at the FBI.
Okay. I like that as a symbol. I won't lie about that. That was a good symbol. I'll concede that point.
Okay. Anyway, it's just that's one of the things that like obviously the X-Files was influenced by The Silence of the Lambs, and Jodie Foster as Clarice Starling is just like such an influence on who Dana Scully becomes. It's just one of the things that I love so much. It's about that little fun fact that just lives in my brain rent free, and every now and then like I get to reveal to people. Thank you for having such gratifying reactions to that, by the way.
This is very exciting.
It
But
was
we're not
delightful.
talking about Eastern Pennsylvania merrily. We're talking about Western Pennsylvania. So I've got to take us back to home. At Sheriff Taylor's house, Taylor calls Scully at the motel and updates them on the warrants he has called in for the Peacocks and checks his gun that is kept locked in his desk unused before he puts it back and away. At the Peacock homestead, the brothers load up the trunk of that white Cadillac with clubs, siphon gas into it, and drive out. At the hotel, Mulder tries to get reception on the television, but can't get better than an extremely blurry picture. Scully makes fun of him. I can feel it from here, even in these notes, and heads to her own room for the night, but stops when she realizes that the lock on Mulder's door is broken. He assures Scully that this kind of place, no one needs to lock their doors, and she leaves. But moments later, Mulder reconsiders and blocks the door with a chair.
So Scully absolutely roasting Mulder is one of my favorite love languages.
Yes. And this is why I think she's queer, like 100%, because she will read Mulder and it is fun and campy and great. And I love it. I just love it. I just love it.
She's the greatest. Dana Scully is the love of my life. I'm obsessed with her.
Absolutely. Yeah. Can we talk about these rabbit ears antennas that poor Mulder is trying to fight with? Because, dear God, I have no nostalgia for those.
No, none at all.
No,
that was a
not
terrible
good.
time. And like how you would have to rely on another person to like help with reception, or you're perceived that they were actually helping and they were actually not doing anything at all. Ugh.
We would hang tinfoil between the two antennae to increase the viability of them.
That's adorable.
Like a little sheet, like a small dish in our home. I think it probably beamed cancer rays directly at me, but whatever.
Sheriff Taylor sits out on his front porch when his wife comes out to bring him to bed. He says that he wanted to take one last look at home, the home he loved, before everything changes. They go in, leaving the front door unlocked. In a cool bit of editing, we see the camera flashing in between the Peacocks driving in the Cadillac, Scully sleeping, Mulder watching a nature documentary on that fuzzy hotel TV, and the Taylors before we hear the very distinctive song coming from the Peacocks' car as they arrive at the Taylor home. He gets his wife to hide under the bed and starts to go for his gun, but there isn't time, so he gets a bat instead. And Sheriff Taylor tries to ambush the Peacocks, but it's no good, and they brutally kill them both.
Yeah, it was pretty violent. As we'll note when we discover these bodies as well, a lot of it's off screen, which is for the better. Mm-hmm. But the implied violence is so real, and it's so stark against this very creepy cover of Wonderful, Wonderful, which is covered because Mathis wouldn't allow his original song to be used based on the contents of the script, which may be fair.
Yeah, but it's just really evocative and wonderful. Wonderful.
Yeah.
So I think we should maybe start talking a little bit about like the racial dynamics that may have been at play. David, I think you did a wonderful sort of brief on this, the idea that like this might have been 90s colorblind casting, so the political undertones here, or the racial undertones here may not have been intentional, but I think let us talk about, the death of the author. Let's talk about what the actual material is that we're working with here. We're seeing 3 white men who are, incestuous, which again is part of that stereotype of like backwoods, uninformed, illogical people, who we come to discover were sympathetic to the Confederacy, and they kill the Black authority figure in town and that Black authority figure's wife, who is also Black, which essentially ends their bloodline. I think even that shot of Sheriff Taylor's wife, his blood trickling onto her fingers before she's killed, it's very, very haunting, and I think a modern audience is going to be cued in to notice this. So again, death of the author, this may or may not have been the intention, but I think this really kind of showcases how race and class and defining what is the status quo for a place, race can be definitely a part of that conversation, and definitely something that can be targeted by people who don't follow along with their view of the status quo, even if they are like the maintainer of the status quo itself as an authority figure. I think race is so deeply tied into the DNA of America, like that. I've always kind of thought that, well, not always, but I've thought about this in recent years, that just like America has always been rotten at its core because we have slavery, or not have, but we had slavery for so long, including at the very start of this country, that I think if you have 3 villains who, well, technically 4, that we come to discover felt that the Civil War was the war of Northern aggression, and they inbred to maintain their white legacy, I think it's very difficult to not see that there is a comment about race and class in this.
Yeah.
I 100% agree. Though I do think it's interesting because like the visuals that we get on screen are so definitely 100% that. But I'm not sure the Peacocks even knew that Sheriff Taylor was black, because he never went to go question them. They heard about it all through the phone. Like, I don't know, maybe they got his address from a phone book, but I think an argument could be made that they had no idea. And so it just, I don't know what that could say, but I do think that it's an interesting thing to point out.
I think...
Yeah, and
go ahead, David.
That's why part of why I wanted to start this conversation about this sort of behavior in the early to mid 90s of so-called colorblind casting, was this ignorance that was utilized, that we were sort of in a post-racial America, that racial identities didn't matter, and it was white people who were saying that, who then controlled these identities. And because this isn't textual, it is going to lead to the interpretations that we are having right here and now. And I guess if, I could have been there as a producer, I would have said, like, let's add some content, like actually make this emotive and say that this man who has been protecting the status quo that the Peacocks want, they are now motivated to kill because of Sculder, because of Mulder and Scully's conversation with him in the house. That's only a connection that we can get thinking about the episode after. You cannot get that in this moment, especially with all of the visual imagery and audio that is going on here that is keeping you tied to the scene, which then leaves your questions to after the act break, which is, these need to be answered before this, because otherwise we are going to assume that this is racialized violence. There is no other way to well, I guess there's other ways to interpret it, but I just think that this is the interpretation that today comes to this because of this very, very, God, I wish I had a better word than lazy, but this sort of industry practice of not thinking about race as an identity and thinking that we were past the idea of race.
That's really smart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's unfortunate because these are great actors. Mm-hmm. I mean, we don't spend a lot of time with Mrs. Taylor,
but she's great. Like she's so
great.
Memorable in the moments that she's in, and like she really delivers an incredible performance.
Well, and they both die great, which is not like fucking easy work. Like
no.
it looks easy, but he had to like lay in a pile of for 90 minutes while they filmed the scene where he's dead. Like that fucking sucks. That's hard things to, I mean, we talked about Scream and being wet all the time. Being wet is not comfortable. But I just think that unfortunately, like, and the Confederacy of it all, it takes away from what I think the episode actually wants us to think about, which is that if you feel like your insular status quo is being challenged, you will attack the next layer out, even if that layer was trying to protect you. Mm-hmm. And that, I think, is the more interesting story that they wanted us to focus on. But because of the actions of the industry as a whole, we are talking about something different.
Right.
Yeah. Really nicely put.
Yeah, for sure. So, back to the show. Early in the next morning, Deputy Pastor meets Mulder and Scully looking incredibly shaken after he discovered the bodies of Sheriff Taylor and his wife, trying to deliver the results of the car search and the lab's analysis of the baby's DNA. The DNA of the baby is so deteriorated that Scully thinks the lab must have made an error of some kind. Mulder tries to theorize what could cause those kinds of results, but Scully assures him those results would be impossible, as it would require a female peacock to be possible, and there aren't any left. However, there is a woman mixed up in this somewhere, and it's possible she needs immediate medical attention. Mulder wants to get help from the Pittsburgh FBI office, but Scully doesn't think that they'll arrive in time when Deputy Pastor walks in, saying he'll take them, and then they won't be outnumbered up against the Peacocks anymore. It occurs to Scully that the Peacocks going after the Taylors is odd. They shouldn't have known about the warrants unless they could have heard Mulder and Scully discuss it while inside the house yesterday, but they weren't home. At the Peacock homestead, Mrs. Peacock inspects her sons for injuries and then gives a speech about how they knew this would happen eventually and how they have to protect their home.
Yeah, we talked about the death of the Taylors, but this is where we get a lot of payoff of that violence. And it's smart television making to show what you can and then to show the after effects. And all horror, I think, really can benefit from that because whatever you fill in your mind is always going to be worse. And this is a pretty grisly scene. It's excellently designed and it's doing its job very well.
Yeah. They
Absolutely.
really, really are. And like part of that is the way that you said that we don't see anything, but what we do see, like there's a shot specifically of Mrs. Taylor's feet.
Oh,
That's haunting. That's the image that I think about when I think about home. Like how violent and scary it is. Like Mrs. Taylor's feet really gets me.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on that. Like the whole thing is just, it's very eerie. I think having Deputy Pastor show up and kind of take on like the Uber cop role, I think is kind of interesting because he is kind of now like a representation of the change that is coming to home. And he's becoming more of like that cop that I was actually trying to describe earlier, like the badass cop that doesn't pay attention to the rules, is cop on the edge. And I think that's what Pastor also thinks he might be turning it into. Which is why he thinks like bring the body armor and all that stuff. I don't think Taylor would have thought to do that because Taylor's mind just did not work that way, and Pastor's kind of this new cop in this new era that's coming. I want to talk about this speech because this speech that Mrs. Peacock gives to her offspring is incredibly creepy. It is, David was just talking about like fantastic horror filmmaking. This is done so well, and there's an excellent use of shadows in all the scenes that involve the peacocks in the dark because it's like we only get hints of their deformities, we only get hints of what it is that they're doing, and them getting undressed and turning around, and then Mrs. Peacock is talking to them the whole time about how they have to like protect their home. It's so eerie. It's so creepy. Yeah.
Well, and what's she talking about? She's talking about change and that they have to guard against change. But even you talking about Pastor, and I didn't note this thinking about the episode, but when I heard you talking about it, Pastor represents progress. It's progress that I don't think any of the three of us are particularly happy about, but it is progress in the way that law enforcement works. And progress is the villain to all of these characters.
Yeah. I mean, you could even go as far enough to say that it was kind of dictated to us ahead of time because Andy Taylor is named after Andy Taylor, the character from the Andy Griffith Show, and Barney comes, Mulder calls it that like, oh, is his last name Fife?
Yeah.
And then Pastor angrily says, no, it's Pastor.
Right.
He is not, he has 1 foot in the old and 1 foot in the new. And we see after Taylor's death that he's full feet in the new, more militarized cop that we see go on.
That's so smart. I love that.
He does the hokey pokey and he turns himself around and then he is a fascist.
Oh my god.
Oh, David.
Oh my god. Mulder, Scully, and Deputy Pastor plan their approach to the Peacock homestead, and Pastor reveals that he has seen the Peacocks practice with muskets and insists that they all wear bulletproof vests. Deputy Pastor then attempts to enter the home, but is killed by a trap, as they can only watch the Peacocks attack Pastor. And Mulder quotes the nature documentary that he watched last night while describing their behavior, and he comes up with a plan to get them out of the house. In the pig pen, Scully opens the gate and tries to get the pigs moving by doing her best babe chant, to Mulder's amusement. When all three brothers run outside to round up the pigs, Mulder disables another trap at the door before he and Scully search the house to try and find the missing mother. Mulder is examining a newspaper proclaiming that Elvis is dead when they hear a noise deeper in the house and discover Mrs. Peacock. While she screams and tells them to get away, while Mulder keeps telling her that it's okay, they'll get her home, is when Scully realizes that she is home and figures out her identity.
I want to first talk about the Bahram U and the Elvis is dead at 47. I think we've talked about this in other things that we've done, but this is probably the scariest thing that we have talked about, where they then deploy a little bit of humor as a life preserver, as you are drowning in the horror of all of this. It's excellently done. I do think that the Babe reference is the thing that has aged the worst of anything that I have seen recently, because it was a moment. It was a pre-meme meme that everyone seemed to have known what was going on with Babe, even if you hadn't seen it. And I know, Marilee, that this is a recurring thing, even though I forgot about it, but the Elvis dead and Mulder being like, oh no, which is typical Mulder. I'm in the middle of a dangerous arena with traps that can kill me, and I'm going to make a little jokey joke to my wife. Absolutely on brand.
It really is on brand. And not only is he's constantly talking about Elvis, and he had his undying belief that Elvis isn't actually dead and is alive walking around. Like, the amount of times he says something or other about how Elvis has faked his death, God, you could do a drinking game.
Yeah, but we start off with, like, Pastor getting his head chopped off.
Yeah, no, full the head.
Chopped off. And the trap that Mulder nullifies is this giant skewer that comes through the door. Like, the stakes are high. We are ready for tall vampires. Like, high stakes.
Oh my God, no, you can't do that to me.
David, the vampires are in a different episode about the X-Files. Marilee already talked about that.
Yeah, Bad Blood. It's great. You should listen to the Gimmicks episode.
So good.
Honestly, like, I do want to talk about, like, this last act. It's so gripping. Like,
yeah,
it's so well written. It's very well blocked. I think blocking, like, we've heard this criticized a lot in, like, acting on television, but blocking is kind of a lost art. This is so well done, and it's so fun and scary to watch at the same time. It's part of what made the X-Files such a tour de force back in the day. We're watching Mulder and Scully face these incredible obstacles, and they're going to figure their way out of them. And sometimes it's just, like, really ingenious. Other times it's ingenious and it's hilarious, like this. But it's such, like, a cultural touchstone, and Mulder and Scully. And so getting to see them in their element at, like, the golden age of the X-Files, it's great stuff.
It really is. You love to see it.
You do.
Well, we are hurtling towards the climax. Mulder goes to check and make sure that none of the brothers have heard their mother's cry, while Scully stays to question Mrs. Peacock and potentially find a way to get her sons to surrender. Mulder helpfully reminds Scully and us, the audience, that the whole house is booby-trapped. Mrs. Peacock tells Scully that none of the Peacocks can feel any pain at all. It's a family trait. Scully tries to get her to see reason about the murders they've committed, but Mrs. Peacock only says she can tell that Scully isn't a mother because she doesn't know what it feels like to have sons who would do anything for their mother. We have not had a hashtag boy mom since Mrs. Bates. Outside, the Peacocks finish rounding up the pigs and realize Mulder and Scully must be inside. They fight, made more difficult because without being able to feel pain, only a lethal blow can stop the Peacocks. Mulder and Scully take out two of them before realizing the eldest Peacock must have used the fight as a distraction and escaped with Mrs. Peacock. Later, Scully tells Mulder about the efforts local law enforcement are going through to catch them and assures him it's only a matter of time until they're caught. Mulder looks around the Peacock homestead and says that time already caught up with them. On the road in their white Cadillac, Mrs. Peacock tells her remaining son they will have to start a new family together, somewhere that it's impossible to keep a peacock down. Edmund Peacock climbs out of the trunk where Mrs. Peacock is and drives off into the night.
Great stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Great television.
Absolutely. Really a fantastic episode of television. Like, I know that you just heard us talk all about it, so there's no reason to do so. I know that we just Wikipedia'd this episode for you, but, like, this one's a really good one, y'all.
It's a good episode. I think this ending thesis is probably the best example of the existential horror that I talked about at the opening of the episode, which is that time has already caught up with them.
Mm-hmm.
And it is the inevitability of that awaits us all. And I think that the episode directs you and encourages you to think about the peacocks as the villains. But I think it is instead this nature that progress will overtake all of us. That is the thing that's universal to this experience. And that, to me, is the monster of this week.
I love that.
I love that, too. That's really smart.
That's such a great takeaway from this. I love that. I also think that the horror of the unknown, that is the location of the peacocks, is such a great cliffhanger that was intentionally never resolved. A lot of X-Files episodes end on this sort of cliffhanger where there is an alien or a monster or a government conspiracy that, while seemingly resolved or handled by Mulder and Scully, still lingers in the darkness waiting to be rediscovered. And I think the fact that this is another episode that does that is indicative of David's thesis. The idea that although we have this passage of time, it shows that the darkness is always present in America. You can't keep a peacock down is very emblematic of that. The idea that, okay, well, they might have lost the battle, but they'll win the war because as long as America exists, this evil darkness within America will also exist.
Yeah, that's really smart. You guys are so delightful, and I love doing this with you guys because you guys have like such great things. And then here I am, my absolute pedant ass, because I just was like, listen, I find Scully's assertion that Edmund Peacock fathered the other two boys is just bonkers. And like, where does that come from? Why is this just thrown out there at the 11th hour? It's a strange thing to focus on, I know, especially because it is such a great episode, and you guys are making such incredible points about, like, these greater themes. It's just, I had to watch this episode a lot, and this is the things that I'm focusing on. It just drives me up a wall, because Mr. Peacock was alive at this point. All three of the boys had to have been alive because they knew about them.
Yes.
Like when the accident, like all three of them took the Peacocks home. So Mr. Peacock was alive. They gave a guesstimated age for them earlier on the warrants. And Edmund would have been 10 when his middle brother was born. So like, why is Edmund the father of the other two now? Like, what is going on? Why was this thrown out there? It bothers me.
Yeah. I also think that it reduces the emotional impact of the one peacock who was crying during the burial of the infant, which we could then assume was maybe the first trial at a child with Mrs. Peacock. And I think that this little postulation by Scully at the end actually takes the wind out of that sail a little bit, which makes that a little less emotionally impactful.
Yeah.
It makes it a little harder to sympathize with the peacocks, which again, I really believe is a different way to enjoy this episode is to not necessarily think about them as the villains.
No, I 100% agree, especially because if you pay attention, you would notice that it is Edmund Peacock who's the one crying, who's the one who survives. He's the oldest brother. So, like, if this was not his first child, then, because he has two other ones who are his brothers who are right there with him, it doesn't make sense to me, and it really...
Agreed.
I simply couldn't stop thinking about it. So I threw it in the notes here. Thank you for going along with my absolute pedantry.
Well, hey, if we can't be pedantic on a podcast about horror media, where can we?
Where indeed.
So any other final thoughts for this episode, or anything that anyone wanted to point out, or other conversations that you might have wanted to have?
We definitely didn't do this on purpose, but I think it's really a fun and strange follow-up to Hellraiser.
Yeah. Yeah, if the Cenobites had showed up at the Peacock's house, what a banger that time would have been.
Pain and pleasure are the same thing to the Cenobites. They can't feel pain.
That's
they could have
interesting.
gotten along a lot, I think.
That's interesting. That would have been an interesting story.
Yeah.
Mrs. Peacock would have been a fantastic Cenobite.
Yeah.
There you go.
By the way, isn't Mrs. Peacock a character in Clue?
Yeah, I was also going to make a streaming Peacock joke, and I just the ball went across the plate.
That's a thing. That is actually a thing. There's a theory that when I was stuck in traffic for a long time today, and I may or may not have been on my phone while I was waiting. It's fine. Don't worry about it. On the fandom wiki, there was a thing that talked about the fact that this was named Peacock as potentially a jab at NBC, which I thought was really funny.
Interesting. You tried to be Clue. You tried to bring queerness into this that way, and instead we got corporate infighting.
Yep.
The least queer version.
How dare they? Well, on that note, I would like to say that I wish I wrote this before everyone convinced me that the show is much more queer than I actually thought it was. But I do wish that the show was more gay. I'm just saying. It's in the process of being rebooted by Ryan Coogler. So, Mr. Coogler, if you are listening to this podcast, first of all, thank you very much. But second of all, please make Mulder and Scully bi. Please.
Yeah, bi for bi, please. It will make every bisexual who's ever watched The X-Files extremely happy.
And that's who we really are here for at the end of the day. We do love our bisexual listeners.
Well, and I will say that they are probably about a half a year away from getting to this episode, but there is a really fantastic X-Files rewatch podcast happening right now as we speak. It's called The X-Files. It is two ex-wives who are talking to each other about episodes of The X-Files. These are the same folks who did the Buffering rewatch adventure. Highly recommend this podcast if you would like to check it out. We'll link it in the show notes as well, but it'll be a while before they talk about home. So just know you got it here first.
Yep.
But you can be with them. Their episode on Humbug would have just come out when our episode releases, so you could at least listen to that fantastic conversation.
No, I think the episode on Humbug, this releases in November. It would have come out, I think, in September even.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but it's great, and you should listen to it, I'm sure. I'm also a huge EX-Files fan. I've been a fan of them since they did Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Derek was the one who told me about them, and I simply love what they're doing. Though, I will say, when I first heard about the EX-Files, I thought they were going to do the same thing that they did in Buffering, with like having a song at the end of every episode, and I was so excited about getting these X-Files songs. And then I listened to the first episode, they're like, yeah, we're not doing that. I was like, fair, but heartbreaking. But, you know, that's neither here nor there. So thank you so much for listening to this episode. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And I say to myself, it would be wonderful if you followed us on Instagram and Twitter at FearCodedPod.
This podcast, of course, is a proud part of the Glitterjaw Queer Podcast Collective. If you'd like to listen to more queer media podcasts, check out the full roster of shows at glitterjaw.com. And join us next time when we question our identities and obsess over our favorite childhood TV shows as we discuss I Saw the TV Glow. But for now, we will all say to you, goodbye.
Bye. Have a good American Thanksgiving. Drive safe. Fly safe.
Goodbye.
Do whatever. And don't kill your family.
Yeah, that's staying in. That's staying in.